they're building over on mid-cities. I mean, that is flooding from upstream. But we don't know what's going on upstream. We're upstream from that, but then when you get upstream from us, there's a lot of growth going on there. So we don't know exactly what that's.
Is there a lot of the land, undeveloped on Highway 10 is floodplain, right? The stuff that when you're driving along there, that's obviously way below road level. Is that all floodplain?
A lot of it, you know, east of Chase Bank.
Royal Parkway? Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Or are you going?
No, east of Chase Bank.
Yeah.
Would there not be a possibility of basically turning that into a giant detention pond where the flooding goes there? I'm not an engineer, but I stayed in the Holiday Inn Express.
If we ever get any development from there to the airport freeway, I mean, that is part of the puzzle. And actually, the concrete that you were talking about earlier is part of the answer to that puzzle. Is in years past, that's why it's vacant right now, because that was the thought, was you had to create a giant retention pond, and so the property owner has that, their property was basically worthless. Right. But the newer way of thinking about it is exactly, it's funny you mentioned that earlier, I wasn't even gonna go there, but that is the answer to part of that issue is smaller detention, but and I keep my terms confused from time to time, but that very concrete, if you had some large user with large parking, you don't have to have a pond.
Yeah.
It can
hold it.
It's not unlike limestone. It holds that water and then it releases it, evaporates it slowly.
Right.
So that is, you're right on the money with both of those.
Let me make a note of that.
Now, what are you talking about?
Don't ask me to explain.
Bear Creek as it runs under Mid-Cities Boulevard?
Well, I'm talking about near where past Home Depot and before you get to Kmart.
Yeah, that's your old bank down there.
Oh, yeah.
Now, what I was saying earlier about Mid-Cities and Little Bear, that is exactly going in the airport where they're rebuilding that bridge.
Boyd
Branch.
So is there any effort as far as preventative maintenance to help clear out some of our bridges, help clearing out some of our manholes, especially throughout the Wilshire Park? We got a tree growing up next to the one at Amco at 157 and Signal. So
I said Euless or phone call, because that is exactly what we're doing with that miscellaneous creek maintenance.
Okay.
Is we're trying to proactively clear some stuff, but then reactively, not long after a rain, to go clear it before the next rain. Because that is the whole key, is to keep those, culverts, box culverts clear. And whether it's Cyclone Ranch or Wilshire or Little Bear, every time you have a rain that's significant, you have trees fall. Well, if we know they're gonna fall, if we can cut them before we get there, cut them up in pieces where they float down, or if they fall during the rain, we need to get out there pretty quickly thereafter to clear them from box culverts to avoid that.
What's going on right now is a great example. Gary talked about how much money we've spent this year. There will be additional money spent. We've done some preemptive clearing, but a rain event, not necessarily one day, but what we've had here over the last couple of days, as soon as that clears up, we will go back out and go through those creeks, and there will absolutely be additional things that have floated down or fallen or whatever it may be. We'll do another one. It's a never-ending task. We just keep
And it's not something that we can just cut our trees down because upstream of us is where.
Yeah, and then a lot of people think we ought to clear it. Well, in fact, we won't live trees in there the whole time.
Yeah.
So it's not, that's the balance that
That's where
we're trying to
Charles
strike.
Farmers.
So, and
They took all their live stuff off the hills, and every time it rains, the hills become flatlands on top of the road.
before the debt for the Morrisville Upper Branch drainage project was paid off, and all of this was committed to that. So it's only since that debt was paid off that we've been able to have money at all to do this creek maintenance. So it has been a huge benefit to, and the miscellaneous drainage projects to do small, relatively small
Yes, there is a flat rate of $18.95. However, that's per acre. However, there is a coefficient applied based on what the land use is. So specific to your question, for a commercial piece of property, it is $17.99 per month.
Per acre?
Per acre. Per
But
month.
now, is it acre of non-permeable surfaces, or is it just a whole development?
It is per impervious acre of land.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thanks.
You're prepared what you're talking about, that's not bad.
No, I know, when I pay the bills, I look at the ours are significantly less, up in Denton, it's $1,600 a month for one time. It's not much bigger than this.
Okay. You
Streets.
probably ought to pick that a little bit.
I want to see if Kim could order in some breakfast too.
I got more coffee.
The street projects, you find these on page 15. There are 5 of these.
On page 1?
Page 15 is where the streets, you can stay on your
Street tab.
summary or you can follow to the
Oh,
individual
I see,
tabs.
okay.
It's all on the summary or you can go to individual tab on page 15. So the very first one is our Glade Parks. And, you know, this was to cover the infrastructure that was approved in the tax increment reinvestment zone. That was basically Rio Grande Boulevard, Brazos Boulevard, a portion of Heritage Avenue. It had water, wastewater, and had drainage. And we originally had planned this to be in 3 phases. And the reimbursement that is due to develop for was predicated on those original 3 phases. So this may get a little confusing, but when the development opportunities presented themselves, the actual construction was split into 4 phases. And you'll see that from this light blue was basically phase 1. The red was what we now say is phase 2. The green is what's underway, which is phase 3, and the purple is phase 4, and that is what you authorized Tuesday night at the city council meeting. So the phase 1 was issued by bonds, or was paid for by bonds that the city issued. And what we said is we won't proceed until there's enough value on the ground to pay the debt for those phase 1 bonds. The developer said, hey, I've got development that needs to come. We said, okay, fine, put up the escrow and you can build it with your own money. And when there's enough value on the ground to pay for the phase 1 debt, we will reimburse you for what was originally intended to be phase 2. We estimated phase 2 to be about $6 million. And so we said, we really don't care what you spend in what became phase 2 and phase 3. We're still not going to reimburse you more than that $6 million that we originally committed to until there's enough value on the ground to pay for that $6 million plus our phase 1. And then we'll reimburse you for that final phase. And the total was $12.1 million. So what we have now is in the blue, that debt was issued by us, and we believe that when we get our certified values, that the value from what's out there now will pay for all of that debt. You will recall that to this point, it has been paid for by the TERS, which is the money coming out of this development, and any shortfall has been assessed to these property owners only in the form of a PID. So all of that debt has been paid for by the property owners within this tax increment reinvestment zone. No one else has been impacted by that. So now we believe that the TERS will pay for phase 1 with no PID assessment. So that's going to trigger them being eligible for the reimbursement on basically what was phase 2 and phase 3, but not to exceed $6 million. So we will most likely be coming to you. We'll probably start preparing once we get the certified values in July and then confirm in September to do that bond sale to reimburse them, and that would be a $6 million reimbursement. Now, they spent more than $6 million on that red section and the green section, so that's why I'm telling you our reimbursement will be limited to $6 million. They will not be entitled to anything over that. And then what will happen is we will continue to watch the values, and when there's enough value out there that pays for the $6 million and the original $3 million, all from the TERS, no PID assessment, then they will be entitled to that last $3 million. And so if there's a shortfall after we issue this debt, we will issue another PID assessment against those same property owners. And so again, they will be paying the debt on phase 1 and phase 2 from a combination of the TERS and the PID assessment. Again, it is having no impact to any of the other taxpayers in Euless.
This mentions that a portion of debt has not been issued. Is it possible we won't have to issue all of that?
It's looking like it's going to take it all. There might be $100,000, $200,000, it's a $12.1 million cap. But current estimates based on the Rises Boulevard and the remaining work, I don't think there's gonna be much left there. There could be a few $100,000. But for the most part, it's gonna be $12.1 million.
Remember, those are several years old now. When that was done, there was a pretty good little amount of fat. And now,
Concrete prices.
concrete prices are killing us. In fact, they may not even get back all their money. But we got that cap at 12. Right now, we're looking pretty smart. Looking back.
So just didn't want to surprise you with that sale or
What is that little
reimbursement.
road just underneath the red one that's going from left to right? I'm assuming, is that a wall or is that a road?
That's the wall from the apartments to the commercial.
Oh,
You're talking about
yeah, that thing.
right through here. Yes, that is the, basically
Yeah,
the
they're all-
transition between Sweet 28 and one and back to North.
And by the way, before she goes, when I talked about the site plan, that site plan that we'll be discussing in August and July and then asking to approve is basically from the red line north.
The brown.
Yeah, that's
It's basically all of it.
It's all of it.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
The next projects I'll talk about together, two of our ADA infrastructure projects. In a city project, we have $47,000 that can be used for any ADA infrastructure work. And that's typically, we will get a call from someone that will say, I live in this particular area and I'm trying to get to the grocery store and I don't have a sidewalk and I need to be able to go in my wheelchair to the grocery store. And if we don't have a sidewalk and there's an impediment of some sort, then we can take those monies and go out there very, very quickly and react to that situation. That is outside of our CDBG money. The part that you're gonna see here on the map is the second part of our ADA project, and that is the CDBG grant funds. And those are restricted to the areas that we identified in our application. So we can't just go divert that to an area where there might be a need. So we have two projects, one that we can be flexible on, one that is the CDBG identified areas. We've said to you in the past, this is the 39th year project. We've said to you that there is no end to us. These will qualify for CDBG funds as long as there are CDBG funds available. This work will be done for years and years to come, most likely, because there's just hundreds and hundreds of ramps and intersections to be addressed, and this will be a multi-year project. So.
One question about CDBG funds. I know that in the past, we have used those funds for sewer replacement, basically. We are keeping up with our infrastructure from a sewer standpoint, even though we're not applying CDBG funds.
You will hear us talk about that when we get there. We still have our annual commitment to keeping up our infrastructure. We simply did not have really enough areas or any areas left that qualified for that type of work. And because this is, by its nature, looking to serve a population that qualifies because they're disabled, we can use those all throughout the city without having to have that particular area identified as a low-income area. And then the next one I'm going to go to is our miscellaneous street repair project. We've talked about this. This is one of those that we recommend keeping a minimum $150,000 balance. We're requesting $75,000 be added for 2015. That's based on what they expect to spend between now and the end of the year. And we would recommend that you fund that from car rental funds. And as they're, anything I tell you here, the staff has already looked at this and feels comfortable that there will be the monies available. So we're not going to make a recommendation to you that we don't feel like the monies would be available for. So they believe that we will have the car rental monies available to add $75,000 here. And then again, this is though when you just see an area of a street give way and they've got to go out there and cut that out and do a pretty good repair. That typically happens after a really hard winter or something of that nature. So.
Along the lines of streets, Loretta or Gary, I know you brought up the other day that we may be changing our
done.
You know, I misunderstood totally, I'm sorry.
I was discussing your comment with somebody, and they said, I don't see how in the world that could be.
It doesn't hardly make sense, but it is the company that, until we piggyback it with the Grand Prairie.
We're piggybacking with Grand Prairie, it has Reynolds Asphalt here, and their Grand Prairie's contract for asphalt and labor is slightly over previous asphalt only supplies. So when you, I know I would agree with you, it doesn't seem like it could hardly make sense, but when you boil that all in, part of what Mr. McCain says about evaluating is, that's what the contract says, it's in paper, but we can verify that. In some of our city overlay projects this year, we will put that to practical use and see if that is really what it appears to be.
We've just mentioned that Tarrant County. Our main part of the evaluation is us buying paper. It is not money out for us to buy paper when we can get it. It's
No,
cheap.
I wouldn't.
But even as we've done the Tarrant County deal, the most recently here on Crows Trail, it's, we had to go do the milling. It wasn't quite, the Tarrant County had a new guy, wasn't quite to their specifications, so we had to have the milling done again. And, so it's not so much issues, and I love Gary Pickens to death, and Gary Pickens is not out here to prosecute the work. It is, my guess we'll continue to use them in some capacity. This is just so cheap, we have to evaluate. And also, sometimes we do roads that there's a little higher priority than another road, but this road is straight, and Tarrant County will do it. So it's just, it all fits in.
I just appreciate the fact that you're evaluating the best thing.
We are, we're tickled up with the contract, but it,
Yeah.
See, remember, we're just buying the product, we're paying a significant markup. If Reynolds is gonna do it, the markup, if we're buying it at a 40% markup, and they're doing it with their own labor, they can do it at a 15% markup, and have labor, and that's how they're gonna be able to come in.
But you mentioned something there that was, if we have to do the milling, that's more than just the asphalt.
yeah, all Tarrant County does is lay the asphalt.
A great example is traffic control, putting down the traffic bump before you're done, the little things that people think are spikes that are just rubber boots that mark a water valve that you overlay and come back. All that is done by your city crews. Tarrant County literally just shows up, lays asphalt, rolls it, and leaves. And so that's some of the detail.
But I want to be real careful here because that, we're not criticizing Tarrant County. They do is a great job. I will make real clear because, but this, when, under this contract, the contractor has to provide the traffic control plan. The contractor has to provide flag in.
To turn to heat.
And yes,
Yeah.
But the milling now, do they have to do milling?
Milling is bid in this contract, so we can take it either or. If it's cheaper, we would use it.
But the milling is a critical part of that. So we're still evaluating, but I don't want anybody to run later and say we're being critical of Tarrant County.
No.
So if you build it
I know,
wrong, we're gonna
you-
replace it pretty quick.
Cullen Drive, y'all know that's underway. We expect that to be completed in September, and that's within the budget, so don't.
I bet the citizens are happy.
They're at a bad point right now because the rain could not have come at a worse time. Because if you pay attention to the status report, they had just cleared the asphalt, the old asphalt.
Hey, they wanted to be on a country lane,
Wow.
and you can't get much more country than a mud road.
Yeah. If you see Bobby Baker, walk the other way.
If you are following through the book, page 27 is our wastewater budget projects. We have 4 of those. The first is just miscellaneous wastewater rehab projects. It has a balance of $40,000. They use this to repair line breaks that occur throughout the year. The recommended level there is $100,000. Based on what they expect to need through the rest of the year, they're asking for $90,000 more. We do have $208,000 that's been returned to the water and wastewater CIP fund balance. That would be sufficient to pay this $90,000 that they're asking for. And so that would be our recommendation. And again, those are, you never know where a line is going to break, but you know you're going to get a line break. And so this is just a way to keep some money available, again, without having to inflate the baseline, which then would raise water and sewer rates. And then the next one is a TRA wastewater payment from impact fees. We're recommending $100,000 be allocated towards the TRA debt payment. This has the direct effect of lowering the amount we need from rates from our customers, because what we're doing is impact fees are restricted to be only used for projects that qualify as impact fee projects. And basically that has to do with whether or not it's considered a system expansion. Well, we have a few of our own projects that qualify as system expansion, but for the most part, we don't have a lot of those. They come through TRA. TRA expands their system capacity. We pay the debt, our pro rata share of that debt, so we are entitled to use a portion of those funds to pay our debt payment to TRA. So by using these impact fees, that is operation money we don't have to use, and thus it helps to hold the rate down. We're recommending $100,000 next year, which is what we did in the previous year as well. The State Highway 183 Phase 1 water line relocation. You will recall that we had wastewater lines that we were required to relocate as a part of the current 183 expansion. Those lines ran from east of Dr. McGinnis to 157. We estimated that total cost to be about $454,000, but in exchange, NTE was going to owe us about $303,000 for easements, plan review, and inspection. That work has been done, and Public Works and staff are in the process of trying to settle up with NTE now. So we haven't been able to close that project because we haven't been able to get the final settle up numbers on that done yet. The next one is the wastewater main replacement at Denton Drive. This is a project that was funded from the annual water and wastewater operating transfer that Mr. Porterfield mentioned. We are still trying to commit $1 million per year from our operating fund that is used exclusively for infrastructure improvements. This project is replacing wastewater mains that are located on Denton Drive, and that's between Collin Drive and Harwood, and it also includes Bell Drive. The engineering work is underway right now for that project. On the water side, and again, if you're flipping along in the book, and the summary that'll be on page 37, we have 9 of the water projects. The miscellaneous water rehab is exactly like the wastewater. We have a recommended minimum fund balance of $150. They expect to completely deplete that. We would recommend that you replenish it, and we would recommend that that be funded from the water wastewater transfer. The water tank debt, that is a qualified impact fee project. We have been paying that debt from the impact fees since the inception, and we would again recommend that the upcoming year be paid from the impact fees.
Are the impact fees all accounted for in the water and wastewater fund?
They have their own fund. Water impact has its own fund, and wastewater has its own fund. We don't commingle those. The well repairs, again, y'all know we've had a number of well issues this year. We are recommending, that has a recommended minimum of $200,000. We need to add $100,000 back to replenish that, and we would recommend that that also come out of the CIP fund balance in the water wastewater fund that we have available. The meter and transponder program here is basically our annual depreciation of the meters and transponders. That's $158,000 annually. That's transferred from the operating fund and accumulated to go towards the replacement of meters. You know, we have a meter replacement program that is also underway. We have $459,000 available here, and that plus $158,000 that is budgeted annually in the operating fund will be available to go towards that meter replacement program and would be used to help reduce the amount of debt that needs to be sold for those meter replacements.
Is that depreciation at 55%?
This was a number that we took the amount of meters that we had, their expected life, and backed into a number, but these were not depreciated 40 years ago, so we few years ago, that's why there's only 400, and we have taken replacement meters out of that number as well, but we've probably only been doing this for the last, what's that mean? 2008, that's a good rate, thank you, Chris. So 2008 is when we started doing that. Prior to that, they had not been depreciated at all, so that's why we don't have sufficient money in there just to pay cash for the meters today.
So in 10 years, when these get there in line, we should have.
Once we replace them and we start depreciating them, I looked at the number the other day, it looked to me like it might should be slightly higher, but not a lot higher, based on the expected life, and hopefully that 30 years from now, maybe you and I might not care, but somebody would have the money in the bank to be able to replace those without the need for bad
Are
debt.
you, when you do start depreciating, is it at a 55% rate?
This one was not. This was at truly the cost, the expected cost over the life. This was not at a 55% rate. Like I said, in this particular case, it got started 20 years too late, but it got started, and going forward, it would certainly be there, so. And I'm not being critical, it's just simply, you do what you can afford to do, and if you didn't have that money to set up that replacement fund, you couldn't do it, so. The TRA water payment, that's, as we have said on the wastewater side, there are portions of the TRA system expansion that qualify for impact fees. We are actually not recommending using any of the water impact fees to pay TRA debt this year because of our other qualifying projects that the city has, which is the water tank debt payment and the reclaimed water line payment. So we're not recommending taking any of that for TRA payment this year. Looking at the reclaimed system, this is authorized and partially funded. I would make that clear. This was broken into 6 phases. Phase 1, which is not exactly as this map shows, the scope of that had to be changed somewhat to make sure it could stay within budget, but it was basically broken into 6 phases. It was funded from a combination of cash reserves and a bond sale. Those future phases will also require bond sales when they need to be done, but it will ultimately provide reclaimed water for those apartments and the commercial development there along Bear Creek Parkway, and will eventually go all the way to Mid-Cities Boulevard. We have asked Texas Water Development Board to include the next phase in its intended use plan, and that's the first step that is required to get us on the list for the low interest financing. I don't think I mentioned that number, but the number that they will ask for us, I have no idea what it will be by the time our application gets approved, or if it is approved, but it was a little over 1.5%. So it can be a significant reduction to the interest rate if we were to get approved. So what we've done now is ask them to put this reclaimed water system on the intended use plan, and then if we're approved for that, then we would be allowed to submit application for the low interest financing.
This is a good example of a project that we didn't have a crystal ball on. When this was approved, little did we know that the legislature would take the action that they did and put it on the November ballot, and it would be approved at such an overwhelming rate. But we've got a project on the books that we could immediately apply for. So this is another example of why we have approved but partially unfunded or unfunded projects on the books.
Hey, Gary, we're monitoring that real close. That SWIFT funds is what you're talking about. The Water Development Board today voted to publish the rules of how that money will be divvied out. And it was late this afternoon, so I hadn't had a chance to read through over 100 pages. But 20% of those SWIFT funds are statutorily dedicated to reclaiming projects. So I like that we got kind of our hand in the air already, and we've got a project, and we will be competing very hard.
That's a preliminary time. I mean, that is the best example we could possibly give you of how we recommend those things. If it didn't happen, we ain't lost it.
Great project.
The next one is the LVL water line replacement, which you just awarded to A&M Construction. That will change that from an 8-inch line to a 10-inch line. This came in under budget, and this is an example of those remaining funds. Once we're sure there'll be no change orders or anything of that nature, those will be returned to our water wastewater CIP fund balance. Those will be available for you to appropriate to other water and wastewater projects.
I'll brag on Hal for just a minute. That's an example of that. All the costs related to that project are in the project. Where they tear up the street took a really good job of getting the comprehensive project cost in there where we don't have oversight, where we didn't have pavement repair in there, so we gotta go get the street funds to do that, and it depletes the street fund for a water project. So Al is really doing a good job of pulling that together.
Water meters, we mentioned, this is obviously an example of one you've authorized. We do not have the funds, of course, yet other than what we have over in our meter and transponder account. Our application is, if it's not been submitted, it's well underway of being completed by Janina and Chris to get to the Texas Water Development Board, and all the information that they need for that, so hopefully that will get approved. Our meters are in excess of 20 years old. They obviously start slowing as they reach end of life. As they slow, you begin to obviously lose revenue, and there's a point there where your lost revenue would exceed what you would be paying for new meters. So,
Now, will these be smart meters type things?
we currently have automated read meters, and we have for 20 years.
Right.
And Chuck drives around in his truck, and there's a transponder that sends a signal to his
Right.
truck, and he reads meters. The difference here is he won't necessarily have to drive those routes. It will be very similar, but he will be able to take the read from a radio tower versus having to drive that route. So,
But it won't give you real-time,
we haven't picked a system, so I can't start and talk about system features. We are certainly in our RFP going to be looking for ways that in our main lines that it could give us leak detection, say between fire hydrants and things of that nature, so that what we're primarily looking for is something that will help us if we've got a major leak in our main line to be able to identify that.
I was just looking at it from a customer standpoint. You know, I've got one of the, well, I guess now, the TXV smart meters, and I've got it set up where every day it tells me how many dollars I spent yesterday in electricity. And it tells me where I spent it and what time of day it was spent. And I care a lot. My utility bill, I've cut down by doing this, by just those kind of things. I've reduced my utility bill 30%.
Of course, based on turn on the air during the day.
Well,
That's right. You can't take a shower in the morning anymore. You have to go there and like take a shower and take a hair dryer.
LA Fitness has showers.
Well, I mean, quite honestly, we don't really have any interest in that aspect of it. The only thing, we want accurate meter reads, we want to cut our labor costs to do the read, and we want to detect leaks in our system. And that is our only goal here. So, with the rest of it, if it works for you, I mean, go for it, but that is not, unless we're directed otherwise, that is not a criteria we're looking for.
The main thing we
I'm
want
just
to make
thinking
sure
that
is
from a long-term water conservation standpoint, unless it's just cost prohibitive to have that, if there's something out there that has that capability, even if we don't bring that capability online day one, if it's got that capability and it's not cost prohibitive, it's a real, people don't have any idea how much water they use until the end of the month when they get a bill.
Well, we're still looking at various systems and what capabilities are, but our main one, as he said, is just, we would like to be able to be on the same billing cycles as TRA.
Sure.
So that we really do know what our reads are for a month, and it compares to their month, because the systems we're on now are incompatible. Our read times and their read times are different, so it's incredibly difficult to understand what your true water loss is, and we have more of an interest in the billing cycles being compatible, and then just detecting major water line breaks of the cities.
And I don't mean, I may said that dismissively, I don't mean that. There'll be lots of opportunities for discussion of exactly what that would be, but I guarantee you, you're gonna have people that are for that, and you're gonna have people that are against that. And from our standpoint, we want accurate reads, we want to limit our labor costs, and we want to have some detection between major points on our system to detect leaks. That's it.
Oh, absolutely, and from our standpoint, I'm totally on board with that. I've heard that, you know, people upset about the smart meters. I've never understood any credible reason why somebody would be against having information. You don't have to use it, it's just there. But I would like to, when we get to it, just to look at, and if it's cost prohibitive, if it takes it from $5.5 million to $8.5 million, then it doesn't make sense.
And again, there'll be plenty of time for that discussion. Sure. As that gets closer. We're still quite a way away from this.
Oh, I think I
Oh.
hijacked.
Well, no, one thing we wanted to point out to you, because this is happening just right away, and that is, there's a sentence on that water bill that will begin to appear. And we are now required by the legislature to report our water loss.
Wow.
And so that is our, and it's a typical regulatory agency thing. The law requires we do it. They have not yet adopted the rules of how you do it. So to comply with the law, this is what they worked out.
We're losing 11% of our water.
Well,
That's
that's
here, we can
the
tell.
misleading part of it. It is the comparison between what we bill and what we buy.
Oh, okay.
But, so that's all we have, is that difference.
And that's what I was talking, we can't
You don't even know where it went.
Those
Does the
figures
city
aren't
pay a bill?
necessarily the same.
Oh, we pay bills, but it's through our own meter, and then we pay bill, obviously, to TRA. But it is that difference. And the national average is really more than that, is loss. And you got, when you just think of all the miles we've got of lines, and there's leaks. No telling where. We don't have any really good way of detecting them. We've got some leak detection equipment, but some of it is going to truly be lost. Some of it is meter accuracy between those large meters on the 24, 36-inch lines. Some of it is firefighting that we don't have we make estimates of what we lost firefighting.
Gary, we made an estimate on that Cinnamon and Almond water line break, that 24-inch line break. We made an estimate, but it was just that, it was an estimate.
When you got 24-inch water line leaking, and we don't know how long they're leaking. So that's, anyway, we're required by law. That's when you get your water bill in this next cycle, it will have that on there. It may change once TCEQ develops the rules, but so far they haven't developed the rules. Just point that out.
One time per year, so you won't see it every month. It'll be on one bill annually.
Okay.
Just make sure there's not a Y in front of your system loss and estimated. Just make sure it reads as our system loss.
Yeah.
Speaking of losses, when we have a little pause here right quick, I know we've been doing some estimations on our age of our water lines, but we've been doing the same thing on wastewater too. I know Halligan has that new project he's doing for the streets, knowing how good the streets are.
David Allen has pretty good mapping
Does
of
he really?
when our lines were installed. I can't believe he has every single one, but a number of years back, he went in and there was a very extensive effort to date those lines. And I think for the most part, he can give you
Wow.
general data. I mean, he knows that a particular subdivision went in 1967, well, those lines, if they've not been replaced, went in with the subdivision. And so, you know, there may have been some amount of assumption that went into that, but I think he has pretty good records.
You'll remember in your capital supplemental too, there's a request for a camera. And we always think of those cameras as being, there's a problem, there's a break, let's get in there and see what it is. The other side of that is those cameras are used to make those same evaluations on criteria.
That's good.
Yeah, I used this analogy the other day. I got a 2001 Ford pickup that's got 130,000 miles on it. It's in good shape. You may have one that's 2001 with 300,000 miles on it that's worn out. In fact, it's 2001, don't make it worn out. Same now if you go sewer lines where we have the capability of checking. Just because they're 40 years old doesn't mean they need to be replaced. We camera them. Some of them are totally destroyed or deteriorated. Some of them in good shape.
That's great.
Yeah, speaking of leak detection, on the South Euless pool, I know we're doing the leak detector where the guys go above ground and try and hear the leak. Can we not run a camera down those lines and see where's,
Oh, there's water.
well, you got the cast iron lines that we think are leaking, correct?
That's a good question.
That question came up the other day, and I believe the answer was that you could not put the camera down the water lines.
You can't run cameras down total potable water, but if this is not, I mean, you're not drinking pool water.
You're talking about the pool, I'm sorry, I thought you said on the water line.
No, the pool.
Okay.
I'm talking about the pool is leaking, because I tell you, those guys that are doing it from above ground, that's a wild guess. I mean, I've had them in malls where they found the leak, but when we dug down there, it was 20 feet over here, but they thought it was right here. A camera, one of those little camera things, I don't understand why they couldn't find a break. If it's losing that kind of water, it's not
Good, there are some size limitations.
Yeah.
For instance, we won't be able to use the power camera. We have what we call a push camera.
Well, yeah, the kind of, your
Just kind of
plumber,
looks like
yeah,
this.
that runs down there.
And I think, Gary, some of those leaks are beyond piping is construction and minors.
Well, that's the question.
Yeah, I mean, because I know the plumber we use, he's got like a 150-foot thing that runs out there.
Other, these are on page 57. I'll kind of go a little quickly here. The phase 4 at the Texas Star Sports Complex that's funded was for the design and construction of concession restaurant facilities, additional parking, fencing, lighting, concession equipment. The parking, fencing, and lighting are complete, and the staff's still working with Sting Soccer Association on either building the concession and restaurant facilities or perhaps an alternative to those that we've talked about. So
That is kind of been put on hold until we look into the Star Center. And we got a meeting with them 9 o'clock in the morning, so that's part of the reason that's not been good.
the monument sign program still has 22,000. We're recommending an additional 20,000 from Carbonell. We do have one sign obligation down at South Main that we've talked about. This would also allow us money to continue to do maintenance on our city signs that we have. So, and then to place any others that you might see fit to do.
Look for one on Highway 10, West End Highway 10.
And Joe Higgins is still on it too.
He's correct.
Our redevelopment project, this is going to be one of those, there's $66,000 available. We're recommending that you consider adding an additional $400,000 from Carbonell to that, and it would simply give you the opportunity to have funds available if you're presented with redevelopment opportunities that you think might provide some economic benefit to the city. This is not anything that the staff will spend without your direction, but again, with only $66,000 in that now, you would not have the funding if we do not replenish that, if an opportunity presented that you thought you might want to participate in. The EDC incentive project has $50,000. That is one of those that in the baseline, there's a $25,000 annual transfer. That got depleted down when we did the incentive to bring the U.S. Concrete corporate headquarters up from Houston. And so it is built back up to $50,000, and it will receive an additional $25,000 in the regular, from the regular EDC operating budget, if it's approved as it has been in prior years. That's an ongoing transfer. The planning consultant, that has $100,000, that's still available, and the EDC contingency still has $250,000 available. The ADA facility improvement, this is not infrastructure improvements, this is other ADA improvements, has $73,000. We use that for equipment. We use that for staff training. We use that for ADA consultants. We use that for ADA inspectors. We use that for anything that any other department, if the library needs, large screens, computer screens, or if there's some sort of telephone equipment or anything like that that's needed. So that's the monies that we keep available if we get requests like that. And we are continuing to work on the transition plan. We hope to bring that to you later in the year. And that will be our long-term plan that will include everything that the staff has identified to date, and will lay out that timeline as to when those items would eventually be addressed. The Texas Star Golf Course miscellaneous improvements is that ongoing project that we keep for any improvements that are needed within the conference center and grill or on the course. The recommended minimum level in there is $150,000. We're recommending that $65,000 be added to that because we think, I should say, that it would be reinstated to the $150,000. It would take $65,000. We would take that from the golf courses reserve fund. We do think they'll have that money left over. And that would be available for any improvements that would be identified throughout the year out there. The golf course upgrades, that's the green project that's underway, the bumpers, the T-leveling, all that is, Chris has just checked on the schedule for that today. Chris, all reports are in with the green is still on schedule?
Yes, ma'am.
expects to reopen October 1st and expects to be within budget on that. The police and court facility, that might seem strange when that building has obviously been open for a really long time, but when those monies, when the monies were issued for that facility, they stayed with that facility. The last $77,000 that was in that project is being spent right now, and that's for the security system upgrade that you've heard about out there. Miscellaneous park improvements, that is for upgrades to pavilions, playgrounds, picnic tables, furnishings, gazebos, lightings throughout all of our park system, and there's $117,000 remaining in there.
Quick question on parks. I've asked this little question several times. Can we figure out a way where our runners can have some mile markers, or walkers? I've asked that question.
Car park?
Yeah, I mean.
Just our trail system. If you had little markers that every quarter mile just had a marker.
Something.
I
get asked that question
know we,
3 or 4 times a year. They even have apps now for that, that the runners use, so.
apps.
Yeah.
Would be fun.
Yeah.
But they'll have
And we used to use them in the mall for mall walkers. You'd have a little thing, a 1/10 of a mile here, and then just up in the ceiling where they could see it.
I know that, I remember the question in the car park, and it may have been,
Just
I
all of them. I've been asked that question.
I know we don't have an app for it.
I just threw it out there to
Pretty
see if
sure.
anybody was actually awake listening to my question.
Park irrigation, that is one that receives $25,000 annually from the EDC, and again, this has $91,000 in there now, and it just affords raise some monies to go and do park irrigation improvements throughout our entire park system. And then the Family Life Aquatic Center is obviously done, and Kyle and Ray are in the process of closing that out. It currently has $199,000 left. That would be returned to the car rental CIP fund balance for your reappropriation, assuming that all the final expenses have come in. I'm not sure if the very last of the last have come through, but there should be some monies left there that could be returned, so. And then the trail connection, the Glade Parks, that design is underway. The staff has applied for a construction grant from COG, and that's through TxDOT. That would pay for the majority of that project, and you're going to see that construction project listed as a priority A and unfunded here in just a minute. And then we put this sheet in here so we can refer back to it if we need to. And these are all those fund balances that I referred to. So you can see there, Mr. Porter, you asked us the water impact fee, there's wastewater, and then each of the other CIP funds, you can see the monies that have been returned to them from the various projects that have closed out. And interest earnings also goes in there, but that's such a small number these days, it hardly matters. So before we go into unfunded, we'll take any other questions?
Softball world. They're still parking on the dirt. And I thought we would try, we don't allow anybody else to do it, and they're still doing it out there.
Well, and that's one of those things that I just gotta take responsibility for, because we'll get to those unfunded in a minute. There is a plan, we're gonna recommend we push it off a year, but the plan was to build a facility and sell that thing. And so, on the one hand, we need business, there's not enough parking times. In our mind, I'll just say, in my mind, it would be silly to go spend, $100,000 on parking lot for a year or two. So it would be kind of like at the mall, it's a good problem to have to not have enough parking, because it means that people out there spending money. And I know there's been concerns with it, and
But the only reason it bothers me is we're making citizens not do it, or businesses not do it, and we're doing it. And I think if we're gonna do it, then we gotta stop telling other people they can't do it.
That's kind of hypocritical.
I hear what you're saying, and I'm not aware of a business one that.
Well, the mosque was a fine example.
Yeah, but we gave them so many grace periods to build that.
Right, but we're still bracing ourselves.
To this day, the mosque, when they have overflow, they park on that across Harwood.
That's right, on the grassy field.
Again, it's something, I gotta take full responsibility, but you gotta understand, from a business standpoint, we can
It'd probably be a lot more than $100,000 to pay that then.
Well, just add some, but then to come back to you in a year and say, okay, we're gonna recommend that we tear it down.
And sell, yeah.
So, I mean, that's what you call the proverbial rock and a hard spot. But that is what you pay me for, and it's also my responsibility to say, that is on me. And I don't have an answer for you.
I'm saying,
I've
and
heard you.
I totally agree that what we're doing, we should do, but I think then we should, until we clean up our own house, we shouldn't be getting on
And
it.
that's where I'm getting, I do not know of a single, the mosque several years ago,
Yeah.
absolutely, because.
And that's
that
when it
was
first
a-
came up, that we were parking over there, because I was on patrol, and when that whole thing was going on, and I said, well, what we're doing.
But
But the
to
mosque
the
is
best of my
still part
knowledge,
of
that
that
is the only point, only place, is if you're looking
Yeah,
at
but
it.
we may not be able to fix it.
I don't know,
No,
man.
but there's still, they have overflow parking now, and
Occasionally
we're
they
not
do
making,
park.
no, every Friday
Right,
night.
but then we
You
made
go on
them
Harley.
spend a lot of money
Yeah,
to pave something, and we didn't
and we
clean
spent
our
a
own
lot of
house
money
up.
initially to pave softball road.
You're talking about the
And we have overflow
Yeah.
parking
Well,
now,
yeah.
and it's on the grass. Their overflow parking is the Hillcrest and,
I understand that, I understand that. But
Or-
what I'm getting at is, we made them,
I
and
know
I
what
think
you're
when
saying.
we did it, yeah, we should make them do that. But then we found out, we're doing the same thing. We're not making ourselves spend that money.
I'm pleading guilty, that's about all I'm saying.
But yeah, and all I'm saying is, if we're letting them park on Hillside now, not saying anything, and not bothering anybody else, then I don't have a problem.
We are.
But we weren't, and I want to make
No,
sure that
we
going
are.
forward, we don't until we clean up our own house.
I don't think there's any plan for it, is there?
There's been not one word said in the last.
Is TP&L the owner of that
Yeah.
lot? And they have permission from TP&L to use it?
To the vet, it's one of those things, they're not gonna say yes, but they're not saying no.
Yeah.
And when we ask them, they have tacit permission.
Did y'all not talk about some unfunded projects?
Sure, I'm guilty, but that's all I can say about that.
On our funds, the A's are the ones that we're gonna primarily spend our time on. Those are the ones that we're asking that you consider funding in the upcoming year. We will go ahead and talk about the B's because they do impact our multi-year planning. And then the C's are listed in the book there. As Gary said, most of those we took the pricing off of because if it's beyond 5 years, the pricing would be so far out of date by the time we got there, really, so we just put most of those to be determined. On the drainage projects, as you mentioned, there are no priority aids for 2015, and we believe that if we have issues arise, that we can take.
You don't have a quorum.
I don't.
All righty then. You want a copy?
We can talk more about that parking lot.
That's right.
I guess that's what you do when you take too long to give a bathroom break. You just lose.
Yeah, you can break
But-
2 hours into it.
I'm proud people thinking about that. Forum,
Yeah.
not parking, forum.
Oh,
So,
I can see the wheels turning, Gary.
Nope.
He's trying to remember if he already went to the bathroom or not.
Yes. That's it.
Take this.
I was trying to get us done by 8 o'clock. I think I'm going.
All right, you want a cookie?
Oh, no.
Sure.
if,
Thanks.
You really don't have a form now. Pretty soon, you better go ahead and staff it.